Welcome to Potentiality, a space for big questions, deep conversations, and shared wisdom around the most meaningful thing we do as human beings, which is how we parent and educate the next generation. I am beyond excited to introduce our guest today, Jaini Shah, a rapid transformational therapist, food relationship coach, and certified life coach whose path carried her from a career in corporate law to devoted study of how our earliest childhood experiences quietly script our adult relationship with food and ourselves. Her own journey through overcoming internal fears and anxiety, healing from an autoimmune condition, and discovering genuine food freedom became the foundation for a body of work now centered on helping others trace their present day habits, thoughts, and beliefs back to their original root and rewrite what they find there. Working with clients around the world from her base in Kenya, Janie brings both clinical precision and lived transformation to a question many of us never thought to ask: which of our earliest memories are still quietly deciding what we believe about ourselves, how we show up, and what we put on our plate? Welcome to Potentiality, Janie. It is so wonderful to have you here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alina, for having me.
Thank you. Janie, I've been wanting to ask you this question. You moved from corporate law into becoming a rapid transformational therapist, a modality that was created by Marissa Peer. And I'm really curious, what was that moment that told you this was the work you were meant to do? It's quite a drastic career shift. So what has led you here?
Yeah, it's been a beautiful and wonderful journey, and there's a couple of steps along the way. Firstly, was really addressing my health back in 2020. That's when I really had a pause between jobs and I had some time. And because I was feeling so lethargic, so overweight, just really unhappy with myself and my body, I decided to say, you know what, I'm going to take this on. And I came across a 3-month program called WildFit. And that was kind of the catalyst towards this change. Over those 3 months, I learned so much about food, about my relationship with food. And as I made those food changes, I had an incredible shift in my health. Not only just energy, but also that autoimmune condition decided to go away because I was eating better and I was taking care of myself. And it was through that journey then that I met a rapid transformational therapist. He was actually one of my clients. And so we did an exchange of services. So he did the WildFit program with me and he offered me an RTT session. And I kid you not, it was so. Let me explain my thinking behind this. I used to have a lot of internal fears, right? So I would always be thinking in the negative, always the worst case scenario. I'd be walking in the kitchen with a knife and I would be thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to stab me if I trip and then I'm going to get hurt. Or if
Mm.
I'm out hiking, I'd be worried that I'm just going to fall off the cliff. And because we like to camp a lot out in Kenya, every time we'd come across elephants, I would get really, really freaked out. And so this was a
Mm.
constant state of anxiety. And through this RTT session, we uncovered where that fear, that internal negative loop was coming from. And through that, in one session, we rewired that pattern, we rewired that belief. And after about 4 days from that session, I started to notice I was not thinking that way anymore. I started to feel more relaxed because I wasn't having that anxiety or that negative feeling. And to me, that was, I have to do this. I've got to become a rapid transformational therapist and help others through this as well.
That is an incredible story. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of myself, of the fears that I've had, and I heal them in many different ways using different modalities. I've never used RTT, and I also work with a lot of clients, especially when I work with youth. I see the fears of their parents and how they impact the children, and it's so interesting that such a just one session could actually take care of something so deeply seated that you had for a long period of time. And especially living in Kenya, you've had some experiences that most people, at least in my world, never get to experience, such as camping
Yeah.
with rhinos, or, right, literally 3 feet from your tent, or having a leopard 10 feet away. And you've lived a life that those are really moments that really bring up a lot of fear. So a
Mm.
life that was built around that type of an adventure and you facing fear, how does it really show up like in your work and in the work that you like your work on yourself and the work that you do with clients? Like how do you really face a fear like in those types of environments, as well as that almost like low grade anxiety that a lot of people have that then
Mm.
but they don't really have awareness of that. So really fear that is in your face, as well as a fear that maybe we don't necessarily even recognize as fear. What is the work like?
Yeah. So let me share actually how we uncovered this because when we do RTT, you go back to three different scenes to
Mhm.
understand where did this fear come from. And one particular scene really stood out for me. And that is where I really discovered how I created this negative loop in my mind. And so in this scene, I was about 6 or 7 years old and I was in primary school. And I don't know if this happened for you, but when we were kids, you'd go to the bathroom together and like your friends would all go to the bathroom at the same time. And so my friend came with me and I asked her, can you hold the door for me as I go to pee? And on closing the door, her finger got trapped in the door.
Mm.
And so she started to scream and I was confused. I was sitting on the toilet. I was like, do I open the door? Like, what do I do? By the time I got out and then I opened the door, a teacher came running in because she must have heard the screaming happen. So she came in and she just started yelling at me. She just started
Mm.
shouting and saying, "Oh my God, look what you've done to your friend. How could you do this?" I can't remember the specific words right now, but it was this intense shouting at me. And in that moment, I formed the belief that everything goes wrong. I formed the belief that no matter what I do, I'm always going to get in trouble and something's going to go wrong. And so this is what happens as children, we take literal meanings behind things. Now, as an adult, I can look back at that situation and say, okay, the teacher was clearly having a bad day. She was taking out some anger and putting it on me. And is it true that everything goes wrong? No, it's not true.
Mm.
There's a lot of evidence that shows things do go right and they go your way. So by understanding that situation and where I formed the belief from, and looking at it now with an adult's perspective,
Mhm.
I could say that's no longer relevant. That is not the meaning that I need to hold anymore. And then I can start to reframe and rewire it. And so that's how impactful it is when we have certain situations and events that take place in our early childhood. We don't know what meaning we attach to it, what belief we put
Mhm.
towards it, and then later on, how it's showing up in our life. So I particularly loved that scene because it really unlocked so much for me. And then you see, then what happens is it's not about you facing your fears. Because now, after that session, when I went camping, I think it was like 3 weeks later, we went camping and we were out there and we were doing a game drive and we saw elephants and I was calm. And my husband was looking at me like, Jaini, what's wrong with you?
Mm.
Why are you not telling me to move away? Why are you not panicking? I was like, because this is such a beautiful moment. We get to sit
Mhm.
here with these incredible beings. We got to camp, and I used to be really scared of monkeys and baboons. And there was a troop of baboons that were coming by our camp. And again, I was just standing there strong in my ground, and my husband was so confused. He's like, why are you not running away? And I said, because I just don't have that fear anymore. And I think that's the beauty behind this work is that when you notice you have something going on in your life that's repetitive, or you notice that I don't feel my best here. Sometimes it's not always just about addressing it head on. Like, people
Mhm.
who have a fear of snakes and they're like, just go hold a snake and you'll be over it. Sometimes there can be a different route towards that to understand where did that fear come from so that we could rewire it from the subconscious So that now when you go to approach a snake, you're not facing the fear, you just don't have that fear.
Mhm. That is incredible. And thank you for sharing that beautiful story. And that is true. I see it in my work every day. How, as kids, if we don't interpret something accurately, simply because we can't, we just don't have the life experience, we don't have the understanding. But an experience like yours can actually impact our psyche and our understanding, our self-concept and understanding of the world, and being so fearful of everything going wrong. And I do know quite a few people who, to their 60s, 70s, actually still lead that lifestyle. And some of them don't even believe that a simple practice or a one session can actually help them alleviate so much of they've been carrying from their childhood unexamined that has shaped their life the way it has shaped, and there's no longer a need to carry that. And thank you for speaking to a much gentler way of addressing those fears rather than actually facing it head on, because that's very traumatic and very intense for the nervous system. There's a much better way to do it
Yeah.
through a modality that you are offering. So thank you for that beautiful share. I really want us now to talk about how all of that is connected to food, because what you do is not very common, and oftentimes we don't think of food as a coping mechanism. But I know from my experience, for as long as I remember myself, I am losing weight, right? Only for a period of time, and then it slowly cripples back on. That definitely tells me that there's still something unresolved. And currently, I am in pre-Hashimoto. And so that's something that I am navigating. I was reading your story, and you've spoken about healing from Hashimoto's and finding food freedom yourself. I'm really curious to hear that story. And which of your childhood patterns did you have to uncover in order to resolve your health issues? And how do you help others do the same?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. This takes us all the way back to understanding the foundational concept of why food equals love, right?
Mm,
So when we were a tiny, tiny baby and we were being fed by our mother or our caregiver, in that single moment, every single one of your significant needs were met, right? You're being held. So you feel safe, you feel secure, you feel connected, you feel loved, you have touch. Everything is like wonderful in that moment. And at the same time, in that moment, you're being given milk,
mm,
right? And so we form that connection. Food equals love. Now it's a beautiful connection, but it's also a really dangerous association, right?
mhm,
When we become adults, that if we're not aware of it. So that's kind of the first thing to just bear in mind as you go through your own food journey is that there's nothing wrong with you. We all have an attachment to food. We all lean towards food as comfort. It's when it gets out of hand and it's affecting our health that maybe we need to take a bit of a keener eye towards it. And so one of the first steps that really helped me was just bringing awareness to the inner stories and the inner chatter that I have around food. So part of this WildFit program was looking into that food psychology, which was when you're looking for something, when you're saying, oh, I just need a piece of this, or I just need a slice of that,
mm,
stop being curious with yourself and ask yourself, but why? What's going on? I remember this with popcorn, for example. Like I had a really strong attachment to popcorn. It would be my go-to stress eater. It would be my go-to, let me just relax and switch off eater. And there's nothing insanely wrong with popcorn, but when you eat too much of it, that becomes a problem, especially when
mhm,
you're leaning on it as a crutch. And so I remember listening to this voice inside my head saying, oh, you've had a really long day at work. You deserve a bowl of popcorn. Okay, no, we're trying to lose weight. We don't need to eat popcorn now. It's too late. Yeah, but we just want to sit and watch TV. Let's have a bit of popcorn. I guess a little bit won't hurt. But we all have these stories in our head, and I'm
mhm,
sure you have them too, Alina. Like, you may have heard it before, and if you haven't, now after this conversation, you're going to start listening to it more. And then on top of that, you add another layer and ask yourself, where do you think I learned this from? And strangely enough for me, my mom loves popcorn. So I feel like there's an association there that maybe I learned this habit from my mom. And that was what was going on in my household. And that's how I formed that attachment as well. But the other really good example I can give is around chips or fries, whichever country you're listening from. Um, but for me, gosh, fries were food, like they were comfort, they were love, they were connection to family. And I discovered that by eating it really slowly, eating it with no distraction, and just closing my eyes with every bite. And on the first three bites, it tasted delicious and amazing. And I was like, oh, this is so good. By the fourth bite or the fifth bite, you start to realize it's a bit oily. It's okay. It's not that great. And we don't do this often, right?
Hmm.
Because we're very quick to eat. We just gobble things down. And so as I closed my eyes, I started to get the sensation, and then like this memory popped up in my mind. And it was of these Saturday nights where we would all be gathering as a larger extended family and we would all eat chips. And it would be some of the most fun nights that we would ever have because everyone's together, everyone's so happy, everyone's just connecting, and it was so joyful. And then I realized, that is the meaning that I have placed on chips. That's what it equals. That's the memory I'm trying to go back to. That's the feeling I'm trying to go back to.
Hmm.
And so when you can start to understand where it's coming from and what meaning you've put on a particular food, you can then say, well, what do I really need? Okay, so Janie, I need more love. I need more connection. I need more family time. Why don't we work on those and fill that up? And then notice how the craving for the chips goes down. And that was a
Hmm.
really great way to explore what else is going on behind food.
That is incredible, Janie. There's so many things that were going through my mind as I was listening to you. And thank you for beautifully explaining how we actually develop that sometimes unhealthy attachment to food only because it actually replaces to other very fundamental human needs that we have. And I know the food can be just literally anything. It really doesn't matter,
Yeah.
but it's really that mindful approach because as you start tasting and really paying attention to what needs it helps you meet, that's when really the consciousness becomes that's the awareness, right? That you really need to cultivate with
Yeah.
yourself and what you try to compensate with food. There's also a whole other side, and I'm familiar with WildFit, and what Eric also teaches is what the food industry does, right? Because if you think
Mm.
about it, they do promote those chips and popcorns on a Friday night because you've worked so hard all week. You deserve it. So it really makes a justification easy. Yes, I deserve it. Like
Yeah.
it, one popcorn or one bag of popcorn once a week is not going to do much, although it does because it develops the habit that you now become
Mm.
dependent on. And I realize of myself and a lot of people around me, especially on jobs that are very busy. I was an educator for many years, and all you have is maybe 5 minutes to shove something down your throat only because you need your stomach not to bother you to tell you that I'm hungry so you can keep
Yeah.
running. Right. So that's really the routine that a lot of people live in. And I'm thinking of my one of my favorite coffee shops. I walked in the other day and it said, having a bad day? Try our strawberry frappuccino. Right. So all of a
There you
sudden you're
go.
like, yeah, I'm a little down today. Let me try this. So the whole marketing around food is
Yeah.
really trying to speak to your emotions to sell what you
Mhm.
oftentimes don't need. You don't need it nutritionally, right, for your health. And so in my mind, and I think this is what you're speaking to, food freedom is emotional freedom, is really
Mm.
the ability to regulate your emotions in a way and really meet your human needs with what's truly appropriate for that need rather than make food your coping mechanism for all of it. So I'm really
Yes,
curious,
that is so perfectly put.
Yeah, thank you. So, how does RTT, and I'm really curious, I really want us to get to the modality that you use so effectively. Can you walk us through what actually happens in an RTT session, Rapid Transformational Therapy session? What you and your client are doing, and like moment to moment, maybe if you can explain how it works, maybe with a childhood memory, and even helps with the freedom from this type of conditioning, because apparently our systems, especially the food industry, is designed to create that dependency on food, especially the food that you wouldn't have chosen consciously for the benefit of your health. So, how does RTT really help rewire the entire belief system and the childhood patterns, maybe childhood trauma that has created your dependency on food in general as a coping mechanism, and especially on unhealthy food?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So an RTT session is about 2 hours long. And prior to that, we would have a conversation and do like a little and do an intake form to really understand what is it that's challenging you? What support do you need? Is it around a specific food? Is it around weight? Is it around a condition before we even enter into the session so that I can help best guide you towards it? So when you come in for a session, the way it works is we have a really beautiful, simple induction. And by induction, it means just taking you into a nice, deep, relaxed state. When you're in a really deep, relaxed state, that's when you're able to access your subconscious mind, right? So your
Mhm.
conscious mind is 10%, your subconscious is like 90%. And that's what governs and rules and basically runs your life. That's where your identity sits, your beliefs sit, that's where everything sits. And your subconscious remembers everything from day zero, right? So from the time you were conceived in your mom's belly all the way up to today, your subconscious remembers everything. But you may not consciously be able to remember it because that just takes too much power. But your subconscious has everything. So the first thing is we just get you into a beautiful, deep, relaxed state, getting you into a state of hypnosis. And hypnosis is simply your nervous system really relaxing and just chilling out. You are always in control. That's really important to remember that I cannot make you do or make you say anything that you don't want to say. You are always in control. And in fact, you're kind of at a heightened sense. So you'll be able to hear things a bit better. Your mind will be super, super clear, but your whole nervous system is just really relaxed. And so once you're in that beautiful, relaxed state, I take you back to 3 or 4 scenes. So what does that mean? That simply means asking you a question to say, hey, let's just say you have a problem with cake and you just want to stop eating cake or maybe even sugar, right? Let's use sugar. So I'll just ask you the question, be like, okay, you really want to handle sugar and you don't want to have sugar anymore. So I want you and your subconscious mind to go back to a time, a scene, event, a place where you form this belief that you have to eat sugar. And as soon as we do that, right, your subconscious mind knows exactly where to go. And so it will go to somewhere. And often, sometimes people are audio, sometimes people are visual, but often you'll start to see a picture forming in your mind. And so then I'll ask the client some questions like, how old are you? Are you inside or outside? Is it daytime or nighttime? And as I ask those questions, the picture gets clearer and clearer. And once they put themselves into that picture and that scene, it's almost like they're watching this on a movie screen. And
Mhm.
then they describe to me and I ask them, what are you experiencing? What's going on here? And we kind of investigate it. So we're like two detectives trying to figure out, okay, what about this scenario has made you feel like you really, really want sugar? For example, with a client, one of his scenes was his mom baking cookies in the kitchen and he would go there. And when I was asking him, I was like, okay, so what does that mean? Like your mom's baking cookies, that's wonderful. What does that mean to you? How are you feeling? He'd be like, oh, I'm feeling really happy. I'm feeling very connected. And he
Mm.
started to form this that, oh, that was the one moment in time that I would actually get my mom's attention, that we would actually be bonding. And I linked that to sugar. And so,
Mm.
as we discover this and we identify what are the beliefs that came out of this scene, what are the habits that came out, what are the feelings that came out, we then put it aside. And we'll do that 2 or 3 more times to understand all the different little bits and pieces from your childhood or early adulthood that affected you as it relates to sugar. Now, once we've collected all of that information, and it's really important because the client is the one actually doing a lot of the work here, right? So all
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing is asking questions to help them investigate, to help them dig a bit deeper. So once we've got all of that information, we now bring it back to them and say, okay, you're an adult today. Let's go back to each of those 3 scenes and let's look at them. And let's look and see, what did you learn from this? Is it still relevant to you today? When you can see that your mom was doing this, does that mean that sugar equals love? Or what else could it possibly mean for you? And so as they start to wrap their brains around the fact that actually, no, as a child, I can see how that meaning was formed. But today, as an adult, I don't think that's the right meaning to put towards
Mm-hmm.
that. So they start to deconstruct it. And then once they've deconstructed, it's really important to now interrupt that belief, interrupt that pattern. And so the next stage that we do is I have them justify why that person or that child or that teen in that scene is no longer them, right? So they have to now say, actually, that's no longer me because today I'm an adult and I can find love in relationships. I can find love in my pet and my dog. I don't need sugar to find love, right? So then now they justify why that's not them. And that's breaking the habit, that's breaking the pattern of what they've always been thinking. And the last beautiful bit that we go into is the reframe. So, like, we just wash all of this stuff away and say, that is no longer you. All those little kids from those 3 scenes are no longer you. And we move into the transformation. This is now where we start to rewire the subconscious mind. And we rewire the subconscious mind by now putting in the beliefs, the feelings, and the meanings that the client actually wants. Like, what would they actually want instead? And so, based on information we get from the session, I will put that in the transformation, as well as what the client has told me that they would like to have. And then after the transformation, the client gets a 21-day recording.
Mm-hmm.
This recording they listen to every day for 21 days, and that just supports the subconscious mind in continuing to rewire their brain and their mind into the new belief, into the new identity that they're stepping into. So in general, that's what a session would look like. There are various other tools that we would bring in, whether it's things we call the loving parent, integrating or upgrading your inner child, looking at different factors. But in general, that's the basic structure of an RTT session.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing it so beautifully and clearly. And it reminded me, I saw a lot of parallels with NLP because that's one of the instruments that I work with. And I think ultimately, all the modalities at the subconscious level have a lot of similarities in the sense that you need to now rewire the pattern, right? You need to change the software and basically write a new program. The subconscious interpreted something inaccurately because of a circumstance, and now it actually kind of runs that pattern until you rewrite it. Basically, that's what needs to happen. And I was also thinking of all the people that I know who've been in talk therapy, not to judge it in any way, but for 10, 20, sometimes 30
Yeah,
years, and really not seeing any results. So I really wanted to ask you the
yeah,
question, and maybe you can tell from your experience that RTT can basically rewrite a pattern within one session, and you need to almost ground it over a period of practice, 21 days, like you said, in order for it to now become the new pattern. Whereas talk therapy sometimes can take decades and never really create the results that you were looking for.
mm,
So, what is really the difference, Jaini, like the fundamental principle that actually makes those two different modalities so different?
yeah. So to clarify with RTT, it can be between 1 to 3 sessions. It just
Mm,
depends on the the depth of the challenge that we're working with or the issue that we're working with. So some things like fears and phobias can be one session, but something that's a lot deeper, perhaps your relationship with food, may take more than one session. It just depends on the client. So I just wanted to make sure we clarify that. The main difference that I see is with talk therapy, you're really just working at the conscious level. And as you're talking, you're often just talking and repeating the same thing, in
Mm,
which case you're actually reinforcing to your brain that this is me,
mm,
right? And the more you reinforce it, the more it's going to stay the same and it's not actually going to change because there's no alternative action that's taking place afterwards. So it's kind of like you're on a repeat tape with nothing truly shifting. And
mm,
so, if at the subconscious level, again, you still believe that that's you, it's never going to change just by talking about it. Um, so, that's the main difference. And then with RTT, you're working at the deeper subconscious level, you're looking at what's actually happened and you're rewiring it from the subconscious. So, if your subconscious is, and it is, 6,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind, then
mhm.
it only makes sense that when you change and shift something from the subconscious level, it's going to have a much greater impact on the change you will then experience in your reality.
Thank you so much. I want to know from your experience, having worked with so many clients, what patterns do you observe? Where does a person's relationship with food usually begin? Is there a common age or more of a kind of common type of a moment that they've experienced? Where does it usually take root from your experience, like for the majority of your clients?
Yeah, so very often in childhood, from the ages of 0 to 7, maybe up to 10 years old, but very often everything is planted in those formative years. Everything is planted from little situations at the dining table, being told you have to finish everything on your plate, otherwise you can't get up, right? Or you must eat this broccoli, otherwise you won't get the ice cream. These things start to form an imprint on you. Or being told, no, you're not allowed to eat chocolate today and sugar is bad. They form imprints on you. And then when you become an adult, you're almost kind of like breaking the change and saying, oh, I can have as much chocolate as I want now because nobody's restricting me or holding me back. And then a lot of times as well, we see with rewards and treats, right? When we're offering food as a reward, either for a behavior or for doing something really well or for passing your exams, this
Mm,
starts to cultivate this belief that, oh, when I do something good, I can reward myself with food, which is also the emotional play that marketing companies work on, isn't it?
mhm,
Like they're
mhm,
telling you reward yourself with this particular, cheesecake or whatever it is. So all those things happen in your very early childhood. And this is, by the way, not to judge or shame any parents. I mean, every parent is doing the
mhm.
absolute best that they can with all the information and knowledge and pressure that they already have on them. It's just all these things do make an imprint
Mhm.
on us.
Mhm. Yeah, so true. And I'm thinking to my own kids. I have a 9-month-old granddaughter, and I'm watching her parents, how they introduce her to food with that very deep conscious understanding that they're shaping their relationship with food at this age. What they put on her plate, the way they introduce it to her, all of that really makes a difference. And thank you for saying that there is no judgment at all, because I'm thinking back to my own years as a young mother. There was so much of this information I had no clue about, right? So, and
Mm.
especially when you go through difficult times, challenging economic times, you feed what's available to you oftentimes. So
Yeah.
there's absolutely no judgment, but that awareness is so, so important. How we actually shape our children's relationship with food and what marketing does. We've created a whole culture of celebration with alcohol. Right, that's another example
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
when I became more conscious of it, I don't drink. I mean, I never liked it. And now I just know, because that's not celebratory for me, putting alcohol into my body. The same thing is with sugar. And having worked in schools for so many years, Every party is about chocolate cookies, right? It's a celebration. It's
Mm.
always with pizza and sugar and more sugar and some kind of soda.
Yeah.
And so we teach our kids to associate those happy moments with that type of food. And that's what they carry into their adulthood. And ultimately, it creates that emotional dependency and all the physical challenges that a lot of our youth have as teenagers. They already have a lot of issues.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's a whole long chain of
Mhm.
systems and processes to break into. But
Mhm.
it starts with one person. The more we bring awareness to this, we can all be part of the change.
Absolutely. Now, there are a lot of parents and educators on this channel, Janie, because that's what this channel is basically dedicated to. We want to reimagine the two most formative forces in human life, which is parenting and education. And we really want to bring all those invisible processes visible. And I think this particular episode is so important in how we see food and how we use food,
Mm.
especially as adults. What is it that we introduce and continuously model for our children? So, if a parent or educator is listening right now, what are the everyday moments around food and meal times where they might unknowingly be planting a pattern their child or their student will carry into adulthood and which will shape their kind of an emotional landscape and their physical health ultimately?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one thing I would say is every time we're judging food, we're creating that pattern in the kids as well. So for example, when I'm saying sugar is bad, right? Look, there's nothing good or bad in this world, but the moment you place a judgment on something, you're imprinting on them that, oh my God, sugar is bad, it's evil. And then either they'll develop a fear for it, or later on, they'll develop this intense craving for it. So be really mindful of how you speak about food and keeping it really casual, right? And as much as you can, not placing too much restriction on things. I totally understand it, for parents who are really conscious, they don't want to give their kids a lot of sugar, then remember you need to model it as well. Don't eat sugar yourself. Don't keep this stuff in the house so that it just becomes unfamiliar to the child, right? Because if you're sneaking around having it, trust me, your child knows. Just because they don't see you doing it, they know it's happening, right? So
Mhm.
that's one thing. And then I would say, doing meal times together is really important because the more you share meals together, you can practice certain things like gratitude before you start eating and just be grounded and eat the meal together. Avoiding screens while you're eating can bring this relationship with food that so many of us have lost, right? Like me, myself included, I'm guilty of this.
Mhm.
I do eat sometimes in front of the screen, and I'm like, no, I want to bring back my mindful practice of just sit with your food and just eat it. Because the more you can be grateful and you can model this for your kids as well, the more they're going to appreciate that I can eat slowly. I can really taste the food. I can enjoy it. And it doesn't have to be a chore. And then stress
Mhm.
around food as well. Kids are really intuitive, right? If we let their intuition play out, they're very intuitive. They know when they're hungry, they know when they're full. But so often we get worried that, oh, they haven't eaten enough, and then we try to force another spoon, force another spoon. You'll notice with really tiny babies, if they've had enough, they've had enough. Like they will spit it out if you try to put more food in there, right? So as
Mhm.
best as you can, try not to override that intuition because then we're doing a disservice to the child because as they grow up, they're not going to know their hunger signals anymore. That's where
Mhm.
overeating can also stem from because we've lost that ability to sense when we ourselves are full because somebody else was just telling us, no, you need to eat more, you need to eat more. Um, and then just be aware of how you celebrate and how you reward, right? There's so many other beautiful things that we can do that don't need a lollipop or a sweet to say well done, or when you've fallen down and you've hurt yourself and you're saying, oh, okay, here, have an ice cream and you'll feel better. Just be really
Mhm.
conscious and aware of how and in what places are you using food. And could there be a better alternative? When a kid has fallen down and hurt himself, actually a beautiful hug would be really nice. Just say, I got you. Everything's going to be okay. I'll give you a kiss and things are going to be fine. We don't need to add food to that. When you want to celebrate and reward yourself, what about some great family quality time? What about going out for a walk in nature? What about anything else that's just not food? So be mindful of those moments as well. Be curious about, where am I currently using food where it doesn't necessarily need to be, and that something else more beneficial could take its place.
Thank you so much. So many great examples. I was also thinking about the cultural norms as I was listening to you. And I remember my own childhood, it was always you gotta basically clear your plate. We don't waste food, right? And
Yeah.
so that was so ingrained in me that I would force myself to eat whatever was on my plate, which I did not choose. And that
Mm.
really creates a habit of overeat. Up until now, I actually do that, right? So if you do
Yeah.
not control your portions, you just end up overeating because that is so deeply ingrained that we don't leave anything on the plate. And that is something that I grew up with, and I'm guilty of doing the same for my kids instead of actually helping them cultivate that intuition and really trusting their inner signal of I'm full, I don't want this, I want this instead, and really helping them guide the process versus me telling them what is culturally appropriate.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And one little tip on that part, because I also had that same thing. We grew up here, finish your plate. But to be able to break through that habit is leave one tiny bit on your plate. So like literally I would start leaving just like 2 or 3 grains of rice or maybe one piece of vegetable on my
Mhm.
plate. As uncomfortable as it felt, as I started doing that, I started informing myself it's okay, you don't have to finish everything. Because yes, you can control how much comes on your plate because now we're adults, we can serve ourselves.
Mhm.
But doing that little bit kind of like started to sink in and say, it's okay. You don't have to finish everything. If there's something still left in the main serving bowl, you don't have to go for it. It can be tomorrow's leftovers. So leaving a tiny bit on your plate can sometimes help break that
Mhm.
pattern.
Mhm. And these are so subtle, right? They're just like small things, but they add up and they
Yeah.
actually shape the way you think and how you approach it, and ultimately how you lead your life. And that's why it's so important to bring this level of consciousness. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
all those beautiful answers, Janie. I do know a lot of people around me who find it hard to believe that one unconscious childhood memory could have shaped their eating pattern for life as adults. They're in their 40s, 50s. How do you respond to that skepticism, and how do you invite them to look into those unexamined patterns, especially if they're struggling to lose weight or they're struggling with autoimmune and some other conditions?
Mm. Guess one of my first questions would be, well, where do you think it comes from then? If you've tried everything, you're a smart, talented adult, and you're still finding this challenging, then is it possible that there's something else that's going on, that's running this behavior, that's running this pattern behind you? And invite them into that conversation with curiosity to say, if you've tried
Mm,
everything, and what do you think the one missing thing could potentially be? Because this is not woo-woo anymore, right? Like this is
mm,
not mystical and out there. Like this is scientific, it's proven. We do have a subconscious mind. So I would invite them with curiosity, say, you know everything. So then what's the one thing we don't know?
mm,
Where is this pattern being driven from? Because if you can get to the root cause of it, just imagine what it would feel like to finally be free from this prison that you're in, of being
mm,
trapped in the way that you are or in the food patterns that you're in, and what could be possible by just being curious of, I wonder if something from my childhood has done that. And then, often I'll just ask simple questions around your childhood, like, hey, what was it like growing up around food in your family, right? Like, what was meal times like? And just have some exploratory questions. And by that process alone, they'll start to be like, oh, you're right, actually. This is what used to happen when I was a
mm,
child.
mm.
And that often helps to unlock it. And then lastly, of course, look, we can't support anyone who doesn't want to be supported? So if they're completely blocked to the idea, it's not my job to convince them otherwise.
Mhm.
And then when the time is right, they'll be open to it.
Mhm. Thank you for that beautiful reframe and honoring individual choices. Ultimately, the person needs to be ready to make the change. And when they're ready, they start looking for answers and they're more open to trying things that they maybe have not considered before. Now, Janie, how does one tell the difference between a habit that they can shift on their own and a deeper pattern that really calls for the kind of work that you do?
Yeah, that's a really good one. So I'll give an example. I had for the longest time wanted to wake up on my alarm. So whatever time my alarm was set, I wanted to wake up at that
Mhm.
time and not snooze it. And eventually through some coaching, through figuring out why is it important for me to wake up early? What would it mean? And what would I do with that time if I woke up early? I got to a point where I'm now waking up on my alarm. And it
Mm.
happened, and I was like, oh, wonderful, amazing. That sort of stuff doesn't need deeper work. So if you've tried to implement a habit and you've either done it on your own or maybe you've used a bit of coaching and you've got yourself there to make it happen, that's wonderful. That's become a part of you. But where you find yourself implementing a habit for a week or 2 weeks or a period of time, but you always notice yourself defaulting back to an old behavior, that's when you know that there's something else underlying it. Because remember, your subconscious is 6,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. So if you're consciously trying to say, I'm not afraid of heights and I can go step on that glass roof ceiling, and then you try and then you can't, you know there's something deeper underlying that. If you keep trying to go to the gym and then you succeed for like 3 weeks and then you default back and you stop going, then you know there's a deeper underlying belief that's preventing you from going there. That's how I would most simply and easily recognize it.
Mm. Thank you for clarifying. That makes all the sense.
Yeah.
I want to ask you from my own experience, kind of reflecting back, and I've done restrictions when it comes to food. I've exercised my willpower and I have plenty of it, sometimes way too much, but none of it really works. And I know Eric Edmonds, the founder of WildFit, also talks about willpower not really being the path to actually creating sustainable results. So I'm really curious, Janie, from your experience, everything that you know with all the clients that you work with, what would it really look like to build that genuine, healthy relationship with food and with ourselves without relying on restriction or willpower because neither really works?
Yeah, so true, so true. And this is where the deeper work becomes really, really useful, right? Because you start to ask yourself questions like, hang on, do I really deserve this health? Am I worthy of it? You know, one key theme in my journey has been with the ups and downs is, hang on, do I truly love myself just as
Mm,
I am? Do I believe that I'm worthy of having this incredible vital health? And there are moments where I don't. And so then I'm like, okay, what makes you believe that? And that's where, for example, RTT or other modalities that help you go underneath the surface can really help you recognize that what's going on? You know, like Alina, do you really truly believe that you're worthy of doing this, that you can have total food freedom and you can live in the body that you want to live in? And
mm,
if not, let's discover where that's coming from and rewire that identity because it all ties back to those beliefs and to that identity as well. And then when it comes to Hashimoto's, for example, autoimmune conditions, what I'm really learning this year as well is that it's not only just about the food, but it's about self-love. If it, an
mm,
autoimmune is literally your body attacking itself. And if you're attacking yourself, you must not like yourself. And I'm like, no, but I do like myself.
mhm,
No, well, actually, if I really truly ask myself, I don't think I like all parts of me. And that's part of the problem that needs to be addressed and to and to fill it up such that I get to a place where I like every single part of me. I love every single part of me as is, not once I reach a goal or once I do this. It's like, no, right now, today, I love myself. And so when it comes to that sort of pattern with food and all, it really helps to go deeper into the belief system and understand currently, why is this not possible for you? Why does it keep coming back? And then from there, we can start to rewire the patterns and the identity so that you can now be the version that you want to be.
Incredible. So, Janie, for someone listening who suspects that an old pattern is still running their relationship with food, and I think I'm one of those people listening to you throughout this episode, where would you suggest they begin looking? What's the entry point into this work, into the deeper work?
Or you can contact me and I can have a chat with you and support you around that. But there's so many different modalities, and I think it's about you really finding what resonates with you and what you find comfortable with. What I would suggest is looking for modalities that help you work with your subconscious, that help you go deeper. Coaching is fantastic as well, right? Look for health coaches, food coaches that can help you there. Rapid Transformational Therapy, NLP, any of these modalities that help you go deeper with someone by your side, helping you, guiding you, and supporting you every step of the way is really, really important.
Mm. Thank you for offering that. And we will get to how people can find you in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to ask our traditional potentiality question, where we look at a large scale impact of the topic that we're discussing. So, if as parents and educators, we understood these childhood rooted patterns while children are forming them, and really offer them what they truly need in terms of meeting their emotional needs and actual nutritional needs in a very healthy and aware way, what becomes possible for the adults they grow into? What might we spare them from carrying forward, which ultimately will shape their life trajectory and what the ripple effect that they will create for their community or beyond?
Oh, I love that question. Um, hmm. Imagine a world where you are, you as an adult are not fighting with, I should have this, I shouldn't have this, I want this, but I'm not allowed to have it. I want this, but I can't have it. Being free of that food noise and that food chatter and just being so comfortable and confident in yourself to choose mindfully, to eat nutritionally, just because that is the norm. And if we did that with the population, the market would have to adapt because there won't be people buying the sodas and the sugary stuff and the processed foods. And so if there's no market for it, we'll now see all of our shelves filled with healthy, fresh, incredible stuff. And you'll have human beings whose gut is so happy and healthy, which means their mind is so happy and healthy. And so we'll have a happier, more loving population that's just thriving. It would just be insane. I could just imagine if I was there and I'd grown up that way, I'd be like, wow, I wouldn't have all these insane challenges that I'm going through right now with my health because I would have had the foundation set right from the beginning. Doesn't mean there won't be other challenges, but at least this is one part that's like it's a basic human right. Have healthy food, have health, and then you can deal with all the other stuff. But it would just be incredible to see that population move that way.
Mm. Thank you for imagining and visualizing that world with me. That was so beautifully put. Janie,
Mm.
thank you so much for this incredible conversation and for the transformation that you create in people's lives. It is so needed. And on top of everything that we've discussed, just the amount of energy that is being leaked and being kind of used on navigating that inner chatter. Imagine just channeling that energy into something more productive productive, more aligned, something that you can offer to the world, it really changes the picture of what we can create, that the kind of the quality of life that we can actually have as a result. So thank you so much for sharing this exploration with me. Where can our listeners find you and learn more about your work? Because I feel like this conversation will resonate with a large part of our audience.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Alina, as well. It's been a fantastic conversation. So where people can find me, you can go and check out my website, www.eatbetterthinkbetter.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Jaini Shah, and on Instagram as well, eatbetter_think better.
And thank you so much for sharing. We will definitely include all those links in the description boxes below this episode. Jaini, is there anything that you would like to share with our audience that maybe I did not ask about?
Just one last thing, I suppose, is be kind to yourself. Give yourself grace as you're going through this. Food is such a sensitive topic. So, don't be too hard on yourself and let yourself just be curious about what's going on. And then the answers will come to you a lot easier.
Thank you for this beautiful episode, for this incredible conversation, for sharing your wisdom, your lived experience, and the transformation that you've created for yourself and for others. There's still some work that I personally need to do when it comes to food, so I will probably be reaching out and taking the next step, because I am ready to resolve this for once and all and be completely free. There's definitely something still holding me back. So thank you for this rich and very meaningful dialogue today.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. I am grateful for each one of you tuning into today's episode and sincerely hope you found it insightful and valuable. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet to never miss an episode. I will see you next time.